All right, we got to talk about this DC bloodbath that's going on. I'm here, Nayr, with my friend, Super Steve.
Hey there. How's everybody doing?
All right, so we want to see your comments in the comments below. So make sure we want to get your feedback. What do you think about the news that possibly DC could stop printing comics for good and go strictly digital? I'm not going to buy new comics digital. How about you, Steve?
I will not buy a digital copy at all. I want the physical comic book.
Okay, now here it goes. We know that because of coronavirus, this has sped things up. That looks like Warner or AT&T was trying to do anyway. Let's look back at the comic book industry and how they refuse to keep up with trends. We know that this happened. History repeats itself. It happened in the music industry. Remember Napster, Steve, when everything was starting to go digital?
Oh, yeah.
And what happened? The industry didn't believe that people would stop buying physical media. And the music industry collapsed to the height that it was because they couldn't keep up with it. Then they retroactively started selling digital media. Look at the comic book industry. Do we see history repeating itself, but in a different industry?
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's talk about it. Streaming is the thing now for television shows. We're seeing more and more companies having less and less physical copies of DVDs, Blu-rays, things like that. And how is this affecting the DVD market? We see the prices of DVDs have gone up. Prices of CDs, of classic ones, classic pressings, have gone up. Now, what do you think, if we look at these two industries, what do you think is going to happen to the back issues that we're sitting on right now?
Well, hopefully people will want the runs and buy them, and it will increase, but it's hard to tell right now. It's going to either ruin the collecting market, or it's going to make people want them and be done with it, and it's just hard to tell.
Warner Media's Jason Kaler consolidated, that's a nice term of saying fired, over at 800 employees. And we're talking some of the employees that have been there for 3 decades.
Yeah, 37 years. They were talking about people, career, and it's like just thrown away in a day.
Editor-in-Chief of DC Comics, Bob Harris. The head of DC's Black Label, Mark Doyle. But we saw this coming to a degree. Remember when Vertigo Comics, they got rid of Vertigo Comics because Warner Media looked at it and said, wait a second, we are paying creators for the characters that they created. We don't like playing that game. Let's just deal with the characters that we have. And so we see it's even gone into DC collectibles. Statues, things of that sort, it's a physical media. Warner doesn't want to deal with it anymore.
Yeah, they it's sad. They want the I don't know what they want. I mean, they want to make money, and they think that everybody's going to get on the bandwagon like Disney Plus did, and with their streaming service, and it's people will buy comic books and look at them, but or read them online. But I won't do it, and a lot of other people have said they won't do it.
They spoke about Disney Plus. We know that HBO tried to do that. DC Universe, we know that that's collapsing. The talk was to merge it with HBO Max, but HBO Max didn't draw the amount of people that they hoped to.
Well,
do you think there's a limit to how many streaming services that there can be that the average family is going to buy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Disney's now talking about releasing Mulan for $30 a view. Well, I don't know if it's a view. I don't know if you can buy it for $30 and watch it multiple times, but it's going to cost $30 to be able to watch it.
On top of having Disney Plus.
On top of having Disney Plus. And it's like, sorry, that's not right. They've already made billions, and they're making millions every month or every week. And it's like, really, you can't pay out of that? How many billions do you really want?
All right, so looks like DC is also going to cut back the amount of titles that they have. I think that is a good idea. I've been saying that for a long time, that Marvel and DC just have way too many comics, and it's impossible to keep up with it now.
It's too many crossovers, too many. It's just too much. I mean, it's like the saying, less is more.
I'd rather have quality than quantity.
Every time, always quality over quantity. I was told that back in the 90s.
So let's talk about that, like looking at if they were to streamline the amount of comics that they have and they had better quality. Speculatively, we're looking at possibly going digital only for floppies, but then graphic novels only for print media. What do you think about that?
I don't think it's going to go over that well as what they're hoping that it will do.
Well, we look at the market and see that bookstores who sell graphic novels, mainstream bookstores, double the amount of products sold over floppies in comic book stores. So what does that tell us about people buying comics from comic stores?
They want to go to comic stores. I mean, it's like...
I mean, there's half of them, but more than double are being sold in bookstores. I mean, guys in our age group want to go to comic stores, but kids coming up, we see that the markets doesn't support that.
They're selling like trade paperbacks in bookstores. Wow, yeah, it's. I noticed that Books A Million doesn't sell comics anymore. They do have trade paperbacks, but I don't go in there because they don't have comics.
Yeah, we love first printings. We love the physical media of the individual issues. But let's say that we grew up in the spinner rack era, where you're exposed to the comics at a drugstore or at a newsstand. What if you're a kid today? How do you think? Do you think this decision makes sense for today's generation, though?
Well, it's pretty much all they're going to know. They don't. It's like. They know the streaming service now. They don't know the they don't like music. They don't know records that well. Records are making kind of a comeback, but they sure don't know cassettes. And it's just been they have no idea all the all the stuff that's been out there that we used. And that they'll never get to experience.
Now, here's an interesting thing when you talk about records. If we're paralleling different industries, because there's a surge of physical media in the music industry, we're seeing vinyl prices increase.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it costs a lot more. They're not they're not selling hundreds and hundreds like they did in the 70s and 80s, of course, but it's like I've seen some new records for like $60 and $70, and it's like, sorry, I'll just turn on YouTube and watch it.
So that's another question that comes up. If we were to parallel, we could see possibly a resurgence because there is no more physical media in the future, that back issue prices could be more in a demand, and graphic novels, this might be a good thing in a way. Can we see light at the end of the tunnel because of this? I mean, you and I are both sitting on a bunch of back issues.
I had the thought last night, it's like if they stop making comic books, physical comic books that you can touch and hold and read, and people will possibly start buying back issues to complete their stories and think that, oh, hey, these are going to be very collectible now, and look at some video games. A lot of video games, yes, Atari, the first ones, they don't sell for a high dollar, but the first Nintendo, some of those games, they're $200, $300, $400.
Now, another thing that's come up, people have asked about the source material for future movies and TV, because we know that that's what Hollywood has been dependent on, are the original comic storylines. I think there's more than enough material for Hollywood to pull from. What do you think?
Oh, there's it's pretty much endless. I mean, it is. If they make a movie every year or every other year, based on a certain character, they could make movies for the next 80 years at least, outlive us.
Another speculation has come up with the frustration with horrible movies that we've seen that Hollywood has made with regard to comic book adaptions is with outsourced material to rely on that actually gives writers of television shows and movies more leeway to create better content. Do you think that's an option?
I think they should stick to the storyline, pretty much copy the comic for comic, and stop going off on this direction that changed the storyline. Yes, I love seeing the characters from Amazing Spider-Man and the Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire. I love the characters, but I hated the story, and it's like, stick to the comics, just the comics. That's what we want to see brought to life.
How do you think this is going to affect the comic book convention scene? The idea of having no more current physical comics from DC.
Well, it's going to hurt the artist. All the exclusives coming out. We've been predicting that for a few years. We knew the bubble was going to burst sooner or later, and people, the variants would they would bomb, they would crash, and it's. They're just going to have cheap, inexpensive shows with us collectors that want older issues and get those dealers in, but it's going to really, really hurt the artist.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Look at the industry going forward, and we know that there's going to be massive repercussions. And if Disney, it almost seems like a testing ground. If Disney is probably looking at to see how things are handled with DC, and if there's a positive swing, what do you think is going to happen with Marvel Comics?
It's going to go the way of the dodo. The Marvel Comics they'll follow suit in the digital era.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the force be with you. Nanu Nanu.